Hi, my name is Hardin Coleman. I'm Dean of the School of Education at Boston University, and I want to talk a little bit about making the difficult simple. Not that there's a simple answer to school reform, but I think we're making it way too difficult and getting addressing it in very complex ways. And I think there's some simple issues we need to address and really get on top of if we're going to make significant changes and opportunities for the youth of today. The first thing I want to talk about is that as we look at various models, particularly the charter school model, we keep turning to business and small business as an example of what's successful. And there's no doubt that small businesses drive the American economy, but there's also no doubt that there's a high failure rate in small businesses. And if we're willing to take those type of risks with our children, that is something that we can consider. But let's not just suggest that just because the small business model works for some people, that it works for all people. And we certainly have a lot of evidence in America where not all kids are getting well trained. But what does work and what we see consistently in our wealthier communities is sustained levels of investment, of high investment. That in our wealthy communities, what you'll see is over decades, people invest in buildings, they'll invest in teachers, and they'll make it a very clear expectation of excellence across the board. And they know it takes a high level of investment for that to be achieved. And I want to give a great example of that from an independent school that has really committed itself to serve really poor kids who are highly mobile, free and reduced. They have a high number of kids who actually have IEPs, individual education plans, and a high level of SED, so severe emotionally disturbed kids who come into their system in 5th grade, and they're leaving the system, and they're way behind grade level when they come in, and they're above grade level, they're college ready, and highly motivated when they leave. And this is a school, the Epiphany School in Dorchester, Massachusetts, where they bring in a number of kids. Now, they run a lottery because they are private, they're independent, they're not a charter school, they're independent because there's so many kids who want to get in, and the only fair way to approach it is just through a lottery. So they take all comers, but they have to be below a certain level of income. And this is a school that starts at 7 o'clock in the morning and finishes at 7:30 every night. They come in, they have breakfast, and then they're in school from 8 to 3. They have organized sports or other activities in the afternoon that are required, and 5 to 7 they get dinner and then homework, and they do that every night. In fact, they look exactly like the middle-class family, right? So I got my kids up in the morning at 7. I fed them breakfast. I made sure they got to a good school. They got home at 3:30, 4 o'clock. I had them in either music or youth sports, and then I fed them dinner, and I sat with them and did homework. So what they've done is they've taken that middle-class model of parenting and they've brought it to these kids at 5th grade to 10th grade. The best part of it is that 70% of the families that come in poor end up being off aid at the end because they have a significant level of family involvement where they bring the parents in. If your kid stays in the school, you have to do volunteer work. And rather than kicking the kid out when you don't show up, the headmaster goes to your place of work or goes to your house to get you. So there's a huge amount of commitment and family involvement. And the ratio is 10 to 1. It's a wonderful, extremely productive, and they stick with their kids whether they're in college. They figured out it costs them $22,000 a year to provide that education. And they're raising all that money privately. So they're independent, they're not beholden to the state, and they're able to do a lot of wonderful things. But keep that in mind, it's $22,000, where many school districts are paying $8,000, $10,000. New York, which is one of the more expensive districts, and D.C. are paying $16,000. So right from the top, here's an independent school working with our high-need kids, understanding it takes a high level of investment to make these type of change, to have small class sizes. Meanwhile, across the country, we're turning around and raising class sizes, saying there are numerous schools in middle-class communities that are going to have 30 to 1 ratios in their schools this fall, starting in September because of all the cuts. And we keep saying it's a problem with the unions, and really it's a community problem. So why is that? I think we really have to ask, why don't we make these sustained investments? And I want to argue it's because in reality, unlike many of the countries that are succeeding phenomenally in education, Singapore, Finland, we don't really think about we. We don't think of a collective national identity where all kids belong and all these kids are ours. We really have a society of me. We're really thinking about, what am I going to get? How many taxes do I have to pay for someone else's kids? What is my kid going to get? As long as we continue that kind of self-centered, autonomy-seeking identity and claim that that's the good American identity, we'll continue to fail in schools.